Hello everyone, this is Truby Chiaviello here with PRIMO magazine. I'm the publisher and editor, and I'm coming to you today. It's Tuesday, May 24th, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Italy and the current conflict in Ukraine. Let's refer to this as a war, the Russian-Ukrainian war, because that's what happens, really. I know that Russia's referring to this as a police action, but this is a full-blown war. It's been that way since February when Russia invaded. That's what happens when one country invades another, and there's artillery, and there's soldiers fighting each other, and other things. And so this is a full-blown war. And last Thursday, Luigi Di Maio, the foreign minister of Italy, was in New York City. He met with the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he proposed a four-point peace plan, to end the conflict in Ukraine. And real quick, let me just tell you what this four-point peace plan is. It says basically, number one, that Russia and Ukraine will have a ceasefire. No more fighting, so that we can settle this matter. And number two is that Ukraine will promise Russia that she will remain neutral. She will not join NATO. There will no longer be this adversarial relationship that's been going on really since 2010, 2012, whenever it's been. And number three, the Donbass region, the area of eastern Ukraine, which incorporates Crimea, that'll be turned into an autonomous zone because this is a Russian-speaking area. It's predominantly Russian Orthodox. It's close to Russia. It has close sympathies with Russia. So this will be an autonomous area of Ukraine. Now, Italy has some experience with this. The area of South Tyrol in the eastern region of Italy is autonomous. And it's different than how we have it here in the States in a system of federalism. It's not so much a state where it gets to rule itself, but in a relationship with the national government. This autonomous zone will be pretty much on its own. It'll have its own laws, its own regulations. But it'll just be, I guess, on paper, part of Ukraine. This Donbass region, if it becomes an autonomous zone, will be part of Ukraine, but it really will be its own separate entity. And so point number four is that Russia will withdraw her troops, the sanctions will be lifted, and then a UN peacekeeping force will be sent in to manage the withdrawal, manage the stability until things normalize. So this is the Italian peace plan. And thus far it's been greeted with some ambivalence. The UN General Secretary, he didn't even comment on it when it was proposed to him. I don't think there's been really any word from the White House. Ukraine has said that they are going to study the proposal. Russia, I don't think, has really made one way or the other towards this proposal. And this is kind of what happens in disputes. Sometimes a country will come forward to offer a peace proposal. I'm reminded of the Pope in World War I. He did this to try to end that war, and it was dismissed. It wasn't given much credence until later on when Woodrow Wilson proposed his peace plan. He incorporated a lot of what the Vatican wanted. So don't be surprised if 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, the United States or England proposes a peace plan for Ukraine and Russia, and it almost copies what Italy has offered. Italy is a major partner in the European Union and NATO, but it doesn't have as much clout, doesn't have as much influence as she probably deserves. But it's interesting as to why this proposal was made now. Why now? Because when you think about it, the United States just passed a $40 to $50 billion aid package for Ukraine, and this is supposed to allow Ukraine to regroup, remilitarize, and counter the Russian assault and push out the Russians once and for all. Well, what happened over last week, I think, sent a message to Italy loud and clear that this war is not going to end anytime soon. Whoever wins, who's ever the more formidable, this is going to go on for some time. And the reason for that is because here in the West, we support Ukraine. Italy came aboard very quickly to support Ukraine, our efforts to diminish the Russian economy with sanctions and other things. But what Italy saw happening was different than what we've been receiving, which is the heroics of Ukraine, victories on the battlefield. The fall of Mariupol happened last week. And what was going on was this was I think it's the 10th largest city in Ukraine. It's there, again, in that Donbass region, which is eastern Ukraine. It's an industrial city. And this was the headquarters of the Azov Battalion. Now, the Azov Battalion was founded some years back, 5 years, maybe 7 years ago. I'm not entirely sure when it was founded, but it was a separate militia group. A number of militia groups were founded in Ukraine. This was funded by a billionaire in Ukraine, and they kind of moved into the Donbass region when this Russian ethnic group was rebelling after Russia took the Crimea, and they fought against these group of Russians, these Russian Ukrainians, I should say, and they took refuge in Mariupol, the city itself. And depending on who you ask, if you ask somebody who's pro-Ukrainian, they'll tell you that the Azov Battalion are a group of patriotic fighters. If you ask anyone who's pro-Russian, an expert who's pro-Russian, they'll probably tell you that they're neo-Nazis. So this is the extreme interpretation of this group. But Russia took Mariupol, the city, and this Azov Battalion, this group of fighters, took refuge in a steel plant. And Russia then began to surround the steel plant. So a lot of coverage, and that this was a holdout group that was fighting hard, and that it was just a matter of time, perhaps, when maybe Ukraine could send reinforcements. This group's not part of the army. The Azov Battalion isn't part of the Ukrainian army. It's part of what they call the National Guard. And this is just to give you an idea what this is. This is just a separate group that was made. They still take orders from President Zelensky, whoever the president will be in Ukraine, but they're still kind of a little bit on their own. They're independent, really. But anyway, they had been surrounded by the Russians. The Russian troops surrounded them in Mariupol at the steel plant that they took refuge. There was thought that they could come back, they could fight back, but that all ended last week when they surrendered, and it was unconditional surrender. They had to turn over their guns. They had to come out. And you could see some footage of it, that these men, they looked tired, haggard, defeated. And many of them were brought back into Russia for interrogation, and some of them are going to go on trial for even terrorism. So the Russians have just totally now dominated Mariupol, and the Azov Battalion now has been decimated. So this sends a message to Italy that even if Ukraine can come back and fight hard, that the Russians aren't leaving anytime soon, that this could easily last for another year, maybe more. And so this puts pressure on Italy, because Italy, over the last 20 years, has forged a, like it or not, a productive relationship with Russia and Vladimir Putin. And the reason for that is just the Italian economy. Italy is a trading country. It's a country of small manufacturers, and this is where it gets interesting. But Italy is not a commodity-rich country. It's not a natural resource-rich country. So over the years, they've had to broker trade treaties with Russia to purchase minerals. And Russia is a very commodity-rich country. They have a lot of resources there. And Italy buys 50 to maybe $60 billion worth of minerals from Russia. Much of that is oil and gas. And this too is interesting because Italy gets a lot of her oil and gas from Russia by pipeline or by ship. And Eni is, if not the biggest distributor of oil and gas in Europe. Surely Eni, the Italian company, is number 2, number 3, wherever it is. Italy has about 17 oil refineries, for instance. I think it's just only second to Germany in refining oil into gasoline. And so you could see what was happening with the sanctions that we put in place against Russia. Russia countered, and they said, if you're going to buy oil and gas from us, you have to buy it in the ruble. And so what the Italians did was, what they told all of the Europeans was that you had to open up a bank account in Moscow, you had to deposit your money for the fee that you wanted to buy for the oil and gas in euro, and then that was going to be converted into rubles. And then and only then could you receive your oil and gas. Well, Italy immediately started doing this. They immediately opened a bank account and deposited their euros so they could be converted to rubles so they could purchase their oil and gas. And according to news sources, Italy is now the number 1 importer of Russian oil and gas. Eni, by the way, is a pioneering company in oil and gas distribution in Europe. And it's a multinational oil and gas company. It's owned, I think 30 to 40% is owned by the Italian government. So it's a key factor to Italy's government as well. So this gives you an indication of what it's all about. This is Italy and so many countries depend on each other, and you may not like the politics of one country over another. You may not like the way Vladimir Putin runs his country, perhaps. But nevertheless, it's important that they have these kinds of relationships because they need it. They need those resources. It's different than here in the United States. We're natural resource rich. We have a diverse economy. It's not the case with Italy. And this is the problem that Italy always finds herself in the European Union and NATO and other places. Germany, France, they have natural resources. Italy doesn't. So Italy has to rely on other countries. So they want a good deal. They want to be treated right. So if they find that in Russia, they will go for it. They run into other problems, too, that they're seeing. As long as this war lasts, Italy is worried that the problem with illegal migration from Africa is going to get a lot worse because Russia and Ukraine are the lead wheat suppliers of the world. And this is ironic because 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when they were the Soviet Union, they had to buy a lot of their wheat from the United States because they were always on the verge of famine. They always had a very difficult time feeding themselves. Even during the reform days of Glasnost and Mikhail Gorbachev, they didn't have bread. They didn't have meat. But now they are the lead supplier of wheat and grain. And their biggest customers are in Africa. Somalia, the Sudan, Egypt, Algeria, all throughout Africa relies on Russian and Ukrainian wheat. And so Italy's afraid that without a steady supply of grain to Africa, that you're going to have bread riots, you're going to have other problems, and people are going to want to leave Africa, and always the first stop across the Mediterranean Sea is Italy. And they don't want this problem anymore. They want to find a way to curb illegal migration. But this is just going to exacerbate the problem. So Italy wants this war to end. Italy wants a settlement. And that's why you've had the likes of Silvio Berlusconi, the former prime minister. He has said that what Ukraine needs to do is settle this dispute with Russia. And this might be shocking to our ears because we are supportive of Ukraine, supportive of their cause. But again, we're not Italy. Italy has had a far longer, closer relationship with both Ukraine and Russia. Just think about the Kremlin. The Kremlin was designed by Italian architects. St. Petersburg, Kiev, a lot of those beautiful buildings you run into there, churches and such, quite often had an Italian architect design them. Groups of Italian artists and artisans would always venture to Russia and Ukraine. At one point in time, Genoa, when it was a city-state in Venice, had colonies in that part of the world. The Black Sea area, the Crimea, Odessa, and they stayed for many years. In fact, up until Stalin, 10%, 15% of the population in the Crimea and Odessa were Italians. They had an Italian newspaper to serve this ethnic group that was there. Eventually, they were kicked out when Stalin became the general secretary, when it was the Soviet Union. And Italy has fought Russia. In World War II, the Russian front, a lot of Italians were recruited to fight there. So they know well Russia. I think in some ways they might even know them better than we do. They know how long this fight can last. They know how long both countries could be at this war. And as long as this war lasts, the economics become very severe. And Italy had it very tough with coronavirus and COVID-19. They want this past them. They now want to regroup and rejuvenate their society and rebuild and get their economy back. And this war hampers that process. So this is why they're offering the peace plan and trying to hope for peace. So maybe it's good for us to listen to Italy a little bit, listen to these countries that are affected by this, understand where they're coming from, when we make our decisions in foreign policy and with regards to Russia and other cases. So that's where we're at right now. We've all been covering this war very closely, and I wanted an opportunity to talk about Italy and Italy's involvement regarding this current conflict. So Italy has proposed a 4-point peace plan. Whether or not the other countries will adopt to it, whether or not this conflict will end anytime soon remains to be seen. But I think Italy right now, where she's at, wants this war to end. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you very much, and there will be more videos ahead.